Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to our final bonus video for horror month. It's been a fun month, but all good months must come to an end. Should move camera like here. Perfecto. But yeah, this is the final video, and I was wondering what we should do, and I think, we've played enough horror games throughout this channel's existence to do a tier list. If you're new here, while I'm a horror fan, especially movies, I'm pretty new to horror games, or I was new. Still new to like 3D horror games, honestly. But um, we played we played a handful. I think 15 or 16 in total. So I'm gonna give my opinions on them. Obviously, standard tier list. S is best, D is worst. Um, if you're wondering why there's no Higurashi or no Seino Yuta on the tier list, I consider visual novels less games and more books. And then you're asking, okay, but I see Doki Doki and I see The Letter, which are both visual novels. I think they have more horror game elements than the other two. That kind of, and they kind of push themselves away, or at least they're more of a modernized version of visual novels. So I decided to include them because they can get pretty spooky. But yeah, without further ado, let's just go. Let's start with all the RPG Maker horror games, because that's what we kind of started with. And why not? Let's start with our very first horror game we played on the channel, Mad Father. So this is our first RPG Maker horror game. I have some fond memories, especially in the beginning. For all horror games I play, the first episode's always like the scariest because you're just getting into it. I think this game, in retrospect to all the other RPG Maker games, is maybe a lower tier, honestly. It's pretty fun, but I don't think it's anything special. Mad Father in particular. Uh, a D in... I'll give it a C. I think it's alright, but it's nothing special. Then let's go to Misao, which is created by the makers of Mad Father. I think it was a little more ambitious, a lot of cool death animations, and they kind of incentivize you to collect them throughout the game. So you actually want to die just to see the cool death animations. I think it's actually a little less scarier than Mad Father, and also there's this I also like played it right after Mad Father, and since it's the same creator, it kind of felt similar, so that's kind of my fault. And also for a lot of these games, I've played a while ago, so it's been a while since I touched these two. I might have different opinions if I ever revisited them. I think I liked Misao more than Mad Father, but not. I don't think it's anything special. Let's do Ebe next. I love Ebe. I think it's my favorite 2D horror RPG Maker game out of everything we've played. The atmosphere was crazy. Atmospheric horror was actually crazy. I was more scared than I thought I could be playing a horror RPG Maker game. The puzzles were there were puzzles and they felt pretty fair to me in comparison to like Aoani, which was a little more frustrating. Um, running away from enemies, like all horror RPG Maker games, well, most of them besides Misao, I guess. Was there a lot of good elements. I really like this game. And I'd probably put it at A for now. S, there's only gonna be one S game. That's how I like to do it. This is best game rating. We'll decide at the end. We'll move something from A tier up to best game. But yeah, I love Deep. I would definitely recommend it. I've only gotten one ending. I'm too lazy to revisit it and get all the endings, which is for most games, to be honest. But it was pretty excellent. Let's talk about Aoani. This one's a classic. You probably the most famous out of the RPG Maker horror game genre. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot to put Crooked Man on the list. Whatever, we can just talk. We can just pretend it's there. But yeah, Aoani, I think again the puzzles are kind of ass, but the chase sequences are probably the most fun out of all the games, especially early on, just because of how fast he moves. Like you really need to juke compared to some of the other games. I'd probably keep it at a B. Don't like it more than Eep. But I think I had a bit more fun with it than Misao and Mad Father. Next we have Corpse Party. Actually, I lied. Corpse Party is probably the most famous out of the genre. I enjoyed Corpse Party. Again, I think I got the true ending or like one of the good endings. It was a little longer than the other ones. The chase scenes were fun. But it felt a little tedious at times. It probably had the most developed story, just to again the length, and there's multiple games in the series. But to me, I didn't like it as much as Ebe. Maybe I liked it more than Aoani a bit, just because it had a sort of depth that is lacking from the other games. But yeah, it's not something I really like loved per se. Again, I do think it's a solid game though, so I'll keep it at B. Since I forgot to put Crooked Man up here, I'd probably also put Crooked Man in the B section. Um, it had a great jump scare with the Crooked Man in episode 2. You can watch it on the channel. Um, and it also took a unique approach to um, dealing with the monster, unlike all the other games where it was more puzzle based on how to shape the monster, or not puzzle based, just reaction based. Aoani, you juke, you run away. Same with the other ones. There's less juking involved in Corpse Party and Eve and stuff, but still generally the same thing. While the Crooked Man took a unique approach and put a puzzle spin on it, so you can't actually just juke him. You have to actually do some specific things. And its story was pretty good actually. One of the better ones, I think. That being said, I don't think it was too scary after that like first jump scare. Um, it felt a little repetitive with the environments. Um, I'd probably also put it in B, maybe in the middle of Corpse Party and Aoani. So right here, imagine Crooked Man like right here. And oh, Yuminiki. Yuminiki is interesting because it's not a horror game per se. It's very trippy. It's extremely fun. It has the best exploration for sure. And I think I found out through playing horror games that exploration is a really fun aspect if they give it to me. We did play through using a walkthrough, but even using this like walkthrough like just for min-maxing sake, because we have time limits and stuff here. Can't just game all day. But it was definitely a fun experience. It wasn't scary, but I think it deserves A tier. I think it does deserve A tier. Another not scary but has horror elements like Humanity is Franbo. Extremely fun game. Still will never forget that one guy who said I was ass and should stop recording games from this, which is true. I was pretty ass in Franbo. It was at a time where my puzzle skills were not great, so I did cheat a lot. I mean, when I say cheat, I mean it's not like I sneak cheat. I do say, oh, I'm gonna look it up just for clarity's sake. But it was a really fun story. The point and click style is a little unique, where you kind of sacrifice, urgency because you're point and clicking. But it has its own charms with more investigations. It's a little more fun exploring areas compared to RPG horror maker games. You get more descriptive. I like Fanbow a lot, but the thing is, compared to the other point and click games, it's probably my least favorite, but I put it above Aoani. Put it on like Crooked Man level maybe. Now let's go into the Harvester games. We got the Cat Lady and Downfall. I'm just putting them at A tier because they are excellent games. Yeah, I love them both. Again, same company, same game series. They're extremely art housey, I would say. They have a story. You can tell what the story is, but they take this point and click genre. What? Yeah, Aiden is not a point and click. You use the arrow keys. Okay, but it's in the style of a point and click. It's basically instead of just point and clicking, you use keyboard controls, but it acts exactly in the same way. But they take the general style of that genre and elevate it to almost like almost like a movie-like structure. It's kind of hard to explain, but it is excellent. The story's fun. Again, with the genre, it's generally not as scary, but the games themselves are some of my favorite games I've ever played. So I'd actually like do this. I think I prefer Cat Lady over Downfall, but they're both excellent games. But yeah, something like that. Also, yes, if you're at the left, I like you a little more, kind of. But A tiers, they're all great, so it matters less, I think. Let's do World of Horror. This is an interesting entry because it's a project that's been in development for a while. It went in hiatus, but we did revisit it in 2022. But unfortunately, not a lot was added to it besides the modding capability, which we didn't even really get into. I love the concept of the game fusing, Lovecraftian with Ito Junji horror, one of my favorite horror authors. But it needs a lot more. It needs more polish. It has so much potential, but the game's been stalling for so long. It's very doubtful that it'll ever really pick itself off the ground. I put it in C, maybe like here. If it ever gets a full release, sure, but I can't really see it happening, so it's a little disappointing. Let's hit Sudru no Hui. Sudru no Hui, the latest horror game we played to finish off this year's horror month. I liked it a lot. You can almost say it's in the point and click style, but not really. It's basically a 2D walking simulator where you mainly press the left arrow key or just left click, and in some games there's a little more, like you can look up, you can do a panorama thing, but mainly it's just left click. So I'm counting the Sudru no Hui as the full 9 games. It's a 9-game series, each game probably like 10 to 30 minutes. It's really good. It hits atmospheric horror very well. The third game in the series is actually awesome. I think it's top of B just because it lacks a little depth compared to some of the other games, but it's a really fun adventure, and luckily for you, 7 out of the 9 games are free. Or if you want to support the artist, you can just buy the 9-game bundle on Steam for $12 Canadian, which is not a bad deal, which is what I did. But yeah, it's extremely fun for what it is. It's kind of unique in a sense, walking simulator, but 2D. The jump scares they vary from good to whatever, but I think the main draw is the atmosphere and some of the storytelling. Some of the stories are pretty good. Alright, let's do visual novels. So we have 2. We have Doki Doki and The Letter. Doki Doki, all-time classic. I remember, I personally think it's probably the most successful visual novel product, just because it got so much attention from, and it kind of spanned, it reached different audiences that don't really touch visual novels, mainly because of some big influencers that played the game. It definitely brought a new spin to the genre, being very meta, having some cool mechanics that visual novels usually don't have, and overall just like a really fun, transformative experience. I think it deserves the A tier. The Letter is more closer to the normal visual novel experience, the traditional one, I should say, but it does have some nice elevation with some quick time events that varied from good to bad, but it did have, I personally think The Letter is actually scarier than Doki Doki. It uses a Kayako-like ghost, which I love Kayako, so, from Ju-on, so I appreciated that. That being said, it's a lot longer than Doki Doki. I only finished one route, and that took me like 50 episodes. Maybe not 50. It took a lot of episodes, though. So I don't know. I haven't finished the full game, so it's hard to judge in its entirety. So I think I put it in B tier, but it's really fun. If you're more into the traditional visual novel um, style, I would recommend trying out the letter. If you're not, then like if you love Doki Doki but you couldn't get into visual novels normally, I probably wouldn't recommend it because it is more like a visual novel. It's more storytelling. It's more a novel than a game. But I'm including this over say no Yuta and stuff just because it has some interesting mechanics. It also, like Doki Doki, has animated scenes in it, which is a bit unique. So it's a modern take. It's good though. Okay, let's get into the Dread Out trifecta. No, it is not in D tier. I'm just putting it there for now. Um, Dread Out. Dread Out 1 will always be nostalgic for me. Um, it is also the first, not including Bioshock series, which I played as a kid. It's the first um, 3D horror game I played. As you can see on the list, these are all 2D horror games. But I love Dread Out 1. It's glitchy, it can be frustrating at times, but atmospherically it was great. Story was fun. Combat was simple but interesting, and it'll always have a pretty good place in my heart. And I'd honestly give it A tier, even though it has a lot of shortcomings. Then we have the DLC for Dread Out, which is a little mixed, but honestly, like, it's only mixed from like YouTubers, because I feel like the reviewers enjoyed it more, and I do think it's probably the most polished version of Dread Out of the three games, funnily enough, even though it's just a DLC. They cleaned up a lot of the bugs from Dread Out 1, and a lot of the frustration. Most of the bosses felt fun to fight, besides the village level. Compared to Dread Out 1, which I love the first half of Dread Out 1, and the second half just a little frustrating with some of the bosses, but it's still fun. What Keepers of the Dark lacks, though, in my opinion, is the atmospheric horror. Like, it's a little spooky, but just from how it's built, where it's more instance based instead of exploration and connecting world based, it loses that touch of horror to me. I'd probably put it at top of B tier, but I feel like it lacks a little. It's fun though. It's fun though. I know some people skipped it, and I really don't think you should skip it because it really is a polished experience. And the school levels with the mannequins, a classic, which people love. But I love the assassin level just because it literally made me scream and jump out of my seat. It's fun. And of course, we have the final or latest entry in the Dread Out series, Dread Out 2. Um, I know some people's opinions vary. Again, I played this year, so a lot was changed from when other people played it when it first released. As watched a couple of gameplay videos from other people, and there's a lot of different changes, and I do think it's more polished than it was at release. Sadly, like its predecessor, Dread Out 1, there's some glitches, there's some frustration. I would say it's a little less frustrating than Dread Out 1. The combat's a little simple like Dread Out 1, but it's a little more boring. I love the exploration aspect of it. I love Mona. She's a great meme character. Um, and I really don't think it's as bad as people say. I would still say it's probably. I put it above Keepers of the Dark, even though, again, Keepers of the Dark, most polished project. I think this game was a bit more scarier because it brought back some exploration aspect for the atmospheric part of the game. Um, but I think Dread Out 1's a bit more solid. I don't know if that's just nostalgia talking, though. I think they're all good games. They suffer from, being an indie project, though, from a country that's not really known for video games. They're known for some good horror, obviously. Indonesia's at least for like new wave horror, I think Indonesia's killing it. Absolutely killing it with some of the horror movies, but just from a smaller studio, buds are kind of inevitable, I feel, to crack in, to be in the game, sadly. Um I still think it's a fun experience, and I would recommend the Dread Out series. It was a blast for me, experience wise. It might not be the best games ever, but I loved it. I love the Asian folk, the Indonesian horror folklore. The combat, again, while simple in both games, still kind of fun. But yeah. So this is the list. I think we need to crown a best game, though. It's hard. I think I gotta give it to the Harvester games. Eve's a close second. And I probably would put Dread out over Doki Doki. Um, but yeah, I'm telling you, if you have not played the Harvester games and you're fine with the point and click sort of more exploration, not too action focused style of games, which you can even say is something like Misao, where there's not really a lot of chase sequences, it's more puzzles and just exploration for deaths and stuff, then I would definitely recommend the Cat Lady series along with Downfall and the other projects, which I assume are good. I just haven't checked them out yet. It is absolutely fantastic. And it's definitely the most unique game out of all of them, even more than Yumi Nikki, which is, praised for its uniqueness. There's not like a series quite like it, and I think it's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, this is me ranking the horror games. No D games. I don't think any of these games were bad. These are okay. These are like pretty standard, but still fun. And it's the creme de la crop up here. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Horror gaming has been a fun experience. Going forward, I do want to expand my horizons a bit and play more 3D horror games and see if Dreadout can survive the test of time, which I'm a little doubtful of, but hopefully. But yeah, thank you for watching. Again, if you are new here, you can watch my playthrough of all of these games on the channel. Just look them up. And, even though October's over, you probably will play a horror game or two before next October hits. So, stay, consider subbing for more horror gaming. And yeah, it's a blast. Also, if you've played any of these, tell me where you would put them on the tier list, how you enjoyed them, etc., etc. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for following me. If you have been following me during the horror month, it's been a blast as always. And hopefully I'll see you again in the future. Peace.